Hi there, my name is Wade Murray. Welcome to the Great Green North podcast, the podcast where we talk about everything about lawns with a Canadian twist. And without further ado, let's get into today's episode. Alright, so here we go, episode 3 of the podcast, just flying into it. So, welcome everybody, all to the Great Green North podcast, episode number 3. It's been a little bit since the second episode, but when I explained to you what happened in the update segment, I think it will make a lot of sense for you guys. Continuing just with a couple updates on what's going on. The upload schedule on this podcast is still supposed to be weekly. Hopefully, I think the release date will be somewhere near the weekend. I'm just still trying to figure out my schedule and everything and get into a groove of when I record these. But most likely, it's looking like Sunday is going to be the best day for record and release, and then a release on YouTube. So the episodes will be recorded and released on a Sunday. If you are a subscriber on Anchor, you will be able to get the episodes within like a week early, and then if you guys listen on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, any of those podcasting platforms, you'll be able to listen to the episodes a week after they are initially released for subscribers. So subscribers get to listen to the episodes a week early, and then for those folks on YouTube, you'll be able to listen to the episodes on YouTube the week that they are released on iTunes, Spotify, and SoundCloud, and all those. So I do have video going today, so for the folks on YouTube, you'll be able to see a video component to the podcast, which might be nice for some of you who don't want to sit here and just look at a picture the entire time you're listening to it. Sometimes it's nice to get a bit of a video component, see how the show is recorded. So without further ado, feel free to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. My name is Wade Murray. I've worked in the lawn care industry. I have experience that I bring from there, as well as my own personal hobbies into lawn care to this podcast to help educate homeowners on the best way to get the greenest and best lawn on the block. So we release these episodes weekly, and we take your own questions. In the question segment, I always give you an update on what's going on my lawn, as well as the successes and failures segment, where I talk about a success and failure that I've had in similar topics to one of the questions I answered. So if you're new here, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below. Please like us, rate us 5 stars, and without further ado, I think it's time to get into the update segment, because we got lots to update you guys on. Alright, so heading into what happened this week. Now, I kind of put my foot in my mouth last week when I said that we had no snow, because man, did we get hit by snow on Monday. On Monday, where I live, we got about 45 centimeters, or for those Americans listening, about 12 to 14 inches. And that was in 12 hours. We had blizzard warnings and everything. Some places in southern Ontario around me got up to 65 centimeters plus, and things were shut down for days. The grocery stores are still missing food. Nothing was really plowed. In the morning, I spent almost 2 days shoveling out my snow shoveling customers. I was getting phone calls and requests to go pick new people. I know some of the people who I know who plow. They were plowing for days on end. Cleanup efforts are still happening around here. There are people in the city, in Toronto. They're still digging out, removing snow off the streets just because of how much snow we received. It was an astonishing amount of snow. It has to be probably one of the worst snow events that I have ever seen in my lifetime. So definitely a really bad snow event. So when I said that we didn't have any snow, we have snow now. We have about 40 centimeters. and we followed up with another 5 on Tuesday, and then we're supposed to get another 5 tomorrow. So the snow is here now, and as I said, there's always a dry spell in January, a January thaw, and then the snow comes hard here in February. February we get hit pretty decently with snow. Continuous lake effect, normally coming about every week, every other day sometimes. There's a lot of snow here in February, for those of you wondering. So, that was that. However, because it was blizzard conditions, how does that affect the lawn? So, as I said last week, it's good to have snow coverage on your lawn because it keeps those whipping winter winds from burning your lawn. But too much snow coverage can lead to snow. Too much coverage can lead to snow mold. So, what we're looking at, because of how much snow we received, I'm looking at a snow mold risk now, especially because it was blizzard conditions, so there was lots of drifting snow. We had some drifts that had to be at least 3 feet high. At the shop that I work at, there were areas of the grass, there were areas of the lawn where the grass was completely uncovered, so that 12 inches of snow had been blown somewhere else, and it was significantly patches, and those grass sections did look like they were decently windburnt because of how cold the temperatures were here. We're still sitting in the minus teens, minus 20, minus 25 Celsius, so it is cold here, colder than we've expected, and it's definitely staying for the significant future. Looking ahead at the weather here, we're seeing, minus teens every single day, and, deep minus teens pretty much every single night. We're looking at a minus 32 on Tuesday night. We're looking at like a minus 20 pretty much every single night, minus 24 with the wind chill. So we're still pretty cold here, and I think it's going to be like that for the foreseeable future. But we did finally get that snow that I was hoping for. We got about a month's worth of snow in 12 hours, but we did get that snow. Following up the snow, though, we did have a bit of a midweek thaw. On Wednesday, the temps rose to about 3 degrees, and we thawed out a little bit. So this was good and bad. Good because it allowed the snow removal operations to kind of pick up a little bit. Mother Nature gave them a little bit of hand, but at the same time, it caused a layer of ice to form underneath that snow that melted. So for those of you who don't know, snow mold forms when you have moisture in between snowfall. So most of the time this happens when it's warm outside and you have a snow event that starts with rain and then slowly converts into snowfall. This is normally a recipe for snow mold. Now, we did not have rain at the front end of this event, so that means that the snow mold should be low. However, that melting was forming near the bottom of a lot of the heavy snowbanks we had. So and there is a very thick layer of ice on top of the grass from that freezing and thawing we had at the beginning of December. And layers of ice on top of anything is not good because it normally has some sort of trapped moisture. It's normally frozen near the top and not at the bottom. Now, we're definitely frozen all the way through because of the temperatures we've had, but I am worried about the grass being able to breathe. So the grass still needs to receive oxygen in the wintertime, and when the snow lies on top of the ground, as long as there's not too much snow, the grass can still receive oxygen through the snow. The snow is not very heavily packed. However, when you put like a rink, or when you get a lot of ice accretion on top of the snow, especially on shortcut turf like greens, that stops the grass's ability to be able to breathe, and that's when you start forming mold on top of that surface, because there's no oxygen being able to get and circulate through those air temperatures, and that's when you start forming mold. So I am worried about the ice that we got from that freeze and thaw, but I'll keep you guys updated. It still is sitting quite cold, but I'm worried once we get a thaw, maybe end of February, that we'll see some problems. As I said, looking ahead, cold and snow. We're still sitting quite cold, and I think we got at least another 20 centimeters coming for us within the next 2 weeks. So this year's shaping up to be similar to last year, where we had almost 36 inches of snowpack on top of the soil before the big thaw in March, and it's looking like that's what we're going to be getting again this year. So that's pretty much the update. As I said, I kind of put my foot in my mouth. I was looking at the weather. It was really cold, but there wasn't really a lot of snow and everything, which was good for my work because I do work outside. But as soon as I said that, next thing you know, we get hit by a blizzard, and probably the worst snowfall event that we have seen in this area in almost 20 years. And I know a lot of you in the U.S. got hit by it too. So I'm wishing anybody in the path of the storm, hopefully the cleanup efforts everything seems to be mostly tidied up by now, just a little bit left. So yeah, that's the update for this week. Snow, snow, snow. And as well as this, even though we are sitting with a lot of snow and it is damn cold, we are almost at the end of January. So for those of you who are in the transition zones, your lawns are going to be waking up imminently, and pre-emergence is going to be something to think about for you guys. So I'm just bringing this up now because I know that they're waking up soon. And for those of you up north, anybody in New York, that kind of area, New York, Washington, South Dakota, North Dakota, the Midwest section, I know us eastern folks will be waking up. New York and Ontario and Quebec will be waking up probably near the end of February, beginning of March. Normally about mid-March is when we wake up where I live. And for those of you in the Midwest, you'll be waking up near the end of March. So folks, we are not that far away. We have about a month left of winter, and then we're going to be flying back straight into the lawn season very soon. So if you're looking for tips to help get your lawn better this year, check out my website, greatgreennorthlawncare.ca. Check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/greatgreennorthlawncare, and you can also check out and subscribe and comment to the podcast. We'll be giving you real-time weekly update tips about what's going on in the lawn. So without further ado, I think it's time to head into the next segment, and the question segment. And I think today we're going to be talking about questions involving pre-emergence. So without further ado, let's head in there. Alright, so welcome to the question segment. Now once again, this week we're going to be drawing the question from my YouTube comments from the 2021 lawn care season, as well as we're just going to be giving you some straight up tips when it comes to pre-emergence and planning for the spring. Now, I know this may be early for you guys living up here in the north, and don't worry, I will be preaching towards you guys about pre-emergence when it comes time here. But for the people in the south, your pre-emergent window is coming in very soon. Let me just actually check the Greencast tool. So for those of you who don't know, there is the Greencast tool that you can check online, and you can check soil temperature maps all across the U.S. Now, unfortunately, there is not soil temperature maps in Canada, but if you check the Farmer's Almanac for your area, you can check your soil temperature record for the significant amount of time that they've collected. So normally they've collected it around about 100 years, so you can check your soil temperature record for that. So like I'm on the Greencast tool right now, I'm looking around, looks like anybody down in Kansas, Oklahoma, sitting in the red. We're looking here down at all my Midwestern transition zone U.S. states, Las Vegas, Phoenix, New Mexico, all the way really up into Wyoming, Montana, and Nebraska. You guys are sitting decently warm enough that you might be able to put down some pre-emergent. Let me just check Nebraska City. So yeah, Nebraska City, your temperatures are sitting around, well, this is a soil moisture tester. I do not want soil moisture, soil temperature. So all the way up here into Kansas and Nebraska, or over here in Nebraska City, your temps are sitting around 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So you're a little cold, but that's, I would say, around the edge where you should be looking. Probably in the next couple weeks you'll be heating up. But Oklahoma City, for example, your temperatures are sitting around 52. You're ready to go for pre-emergence, and it looks like significantly in the season. You guys are normally warmish around this time, so anywhere where your soil temperatures are above 50 degrees, you guys are ready to go for pre-emergence. So looking at this map, it looks like pretty much Oklahoma and south, you guys are sitting decently warm. Definitely the folks in Florida. Well, Florida is that's warm season grass, but for us here in the northern states, we are not anywhere close. Checking Niagara Falls, soil temps have been sitting around 30 degrees Fahrenheit for a while now. So we're definitely still frozen up north into here. So that's what to think about. So when we're talking about pre-emergence in those areas, what do we need to think about? What do we need to apply? So for pre-emergence, you are going to be applying this. What is a pre-emergent? Let's talk about that first. So a pre-emergent is an application that you can apply in the spring that creates a chemical. It needs to be applied before the weeds germinate. So it's a pre-emergent, before the weeds emerge from the soil. And what it does is it creates a chemical barrier on top of that soil that stops grass-like weeds from penetrating through that chemical barrier. So you don't need to use post-emergent herbicides, which would be, your standard 2,4-D and quinclorac, those types of post-emergent herbicides that you can use to treat weeds after they've emerged. This is a pre-emergent, so you can treat the weed and prevent it from emerging in the first place. This is your first line of defense when it comes to weeds. And in the U.S., some pre-emergents to think about are, you have your dithiopyr is a very popular one. And I can't remember the other one. It's slipping my brain right now. Or having a brain fart here. Pre-emergent weed control. I would like to make sure that I find this for you guys so you can hear about it. Anyways, you guys can look it up for what's available in your specific area, but there are, most of the time, they are liquid pre-emergents. Another pre-emergent that is very popular, prodiamine, that's what I'm thinking of. Prodiamine is a very popular pre-emergent for northern states, as well as tenacity can also be used as a pre and post-emergent at the time of seeding. So we're going to be talking about what to do in the spring, what to expect. So another thing about pre-emergence that I would like to preface with is pre-emergence do not tackle broadleaf weeds. So when you're talking about your dandelions and you're talking about, your thistles, these weeds will be attacked by a pre-emergent, but only to a certain extent. Most of the time, if you have a significant dandelion issue, it will grow through your pre-emergent, and you will have to use some sort of post-emergent herbicide on that. But if you are looking at a crabgrass issue, a quackgrass issue, or any sort of grassy weed, pre-emergents will tackle a percentage of that if they are applied correctly and at the right time. So when do you need to apply your pre-emergent? Well, as I said before, as soon as your soil temps hit 50 degrees for a sustained period of time. So if you hit 50 degrees for about a week or two, you think that you're out of your winter, this is when it's time to apply your pre-emergent. Your pre-emergent must go down before the winter weeds begin to emerge and the spring weeds, because if those weeds are already emerging, you are not going to be seeing any sort of help from your pre-emergent. Your pre-emergent can only stop what hasn't emerged at the time of application. So you want to put that application down as early as possible to make sure that you're stopping as many weeds as possible. However, a couple years ago, there was a big swing in temperature, even here, and people put down their pre-emergents in May, and then the temperature swung back the other way. This does happen. Don't worry about it. If the temperature swings back for a couple days, it's not going to affect your application, but try to make sure that when you're putting down your application, it's hard to predict the weather, but try to make sure when that application is going down, you're almost positive that your winter weather is over. So, talking about pre-emergents, when should I use a pre-emergent? And this is where the question comes into effect. So, I have a question on YouTube. It says, your guide was very helpful. Thanks so much for the content. I have a yard full of weeds. I went from 5% grass to 80% grass using your fall renovations. So we'll be talking about fall renovations. However, there are some creeping Charlie and other weeds such as crabgrass still hanging around in my lawn. They will die off over the winter, but should I use a pre-emergent in the spring to stop them from coming back? Thanks for the advice on this. So here's what I can tell you. This specific question is an application where applying a pre-emergent in the spring would be a good idea. This person has completed their fall renovation. They have strengthened their lawn to a point where they do not need to apply any sort of seeding or renovation project in the spring. So, pre-emergent and fertilizer is the best program for this specific person to do in the spring. Stopping the weeds from emerging, first of all, and then focusing on strengthening the lawns to help create a natural barrier for weeds heading into the summer. These are two very great things to do in the spring, and this is the program I recommend. However, I have another comment here. Thanks for the information about fall lawn tips. Should I apply a pre-emergent in the spring if I am planning an overseeding project? Now, this is an answer where pre-emergent in the spring is not a good idea. So pre-emergents create a chemical barrier to stop plants from emerging on the soil. However, this also applies to new grasslings. Most pre-emergents cannot be used at the time of seeding because they will affect the amount of yield that you will get from your seed. So what we're looking at here is if you are in the spring planning some sort of renovation project, the only pre-emergent that you can use at the time of seeding is tenacity, and you have to make sure that you use the seeding rate. But for those of us in Canada, I would not recommend using any sort of pre-emergent at the time of seeding. What you need to do is put down your seed, let your seed grow, let your lawn grow, fertilize it, water it very well. Obviously, weeds are going to come in and there's going to be competition. Once your seed has been established for 6 to 8 weeks, check your weed control about when you're allowed to apply on newly seeded lawns. You can hit it with a post-emergent herbicide and kill out those weeds, and then in the following months you can strengthen the lawn with fertilizer, and the next spring or the following time that you're heading into, you can apply your pre-emergent. So when we're talking about spring pre-emergence, it's very important to think about what is your spring plan. If you have plans of seeding areas in your lawn this spring, that we're thinnish in the fall, spring pre-emergence is not a great idea. However, if you have plans not to seed in the spring, you're just focusing on fertilizer and strengthening the lawn naturally without adding any new seeds, a pre-emergent is a good idea. So think about your spring plan. Now here's my recommendations if you are lost on where to go for your spring plan. I like to always recommend that fall is the beginning of the lawn season. Fall is the time where if you're going to do any sort of renovation, that is the best time to do it. Fall is the time where temperatures stay cool for a long period of time. We can sit in about the 10-degree temperature for normally a majority of the month of October. There's lots of moisture in the fall. The leaves help act as a blanket, sometimes on hills, to hold your seed in. The fall is most definitely the best time to do any sort of seeding project on your lawn, not the spring. However, if you feel that there's a couple sections in your lawn that you would like to strengthen in the spring, you can still do spring seeding, and I have a couple of areas in my lawn that I am planning on doing a spring seeding this year. However, think about this. Spring seeding, you're rolling the dice, you're gambling with your weather. Some springs we actually get a spring. Some springs, like last year, it's May 30th, we're -10 and snowing. So there is definitely a roller coaster in the spring some years, and some years we don't even get a spring. We just hop straight from winter into summer. So doing any sort of seeding project in the spring is always very, very risky. So what I would personally recommend is that you stay away from seeding in the spring, focused on your pre-emergent plan. You're going to be applying your pre-emergent when soil temps hit 50 degrees. You'll be applying your fertilizer 2 or 3 weeks after. You'll be fertilizing all the way up until the beginning of summer, help giving your lawn that extra boost to get through the summer. You'll make it through the summer. Your lawn will normally be limping along near the end of August, and that's when you will do your fall renovation, and you will help strengthen your lawn in general. You can get your lawn from about 5, 6, 7% grass to almost 80% grass in just one sort of renovation, and then fertilizer into the winter, and then repeat. So pre-emergence I always suggest to apply in the spring. For those of you who already have a very healthy and strengthened lawn, you can apply your pre-emergent in the spring and fall if you feel like that is the best thing to do. And I know some people too who have very healthy lawns don't even bother with pre-emergent anymore because they really don't need it. And that's another thing to think about too. There's a lot of people telling you to go sling chems on your lawn. Put this down. Sometimes think about it in your head if it's really necessary, because the chems only work to a certain extent, and especially with pre-emergent. If you keep using the same pre-emergent year after year after year, it is proven that the pre-emergents don't become as effective the more times they are applied. So you need to think in your head, is this necessary? Are there enough weeds that I still need to apply a pre-emergent? Or have I gotten rid of the weeds that my lawn will be able to fight off the weeds that do come in? And if there are any weeds, small, broadleaf, or anything, I can go and kill it with a post-emergent herbicide. That is the best thing to think about in your head. Obviously, there are different scenarios for each, and you have to assess your own lawn. But these are the best things to think. Throwing down chems all the time is not always the best option. And I do like to reinforce that, because I know that there's a lot of people always preaching to throw down chems, and I know some people have differing opinions on chems. You can do everything without chems. So that's pre-emergent for my American friends. Now let's talk about pre-emergent for my Canadian friends. So up here in Canada, we do not have access to chems. However, there is one pre-emergent product that we can apply, and it is corn meal gluten. So for those of you who don't understand the farming process, most of you know that you cannot plant a crop of corn into a previous crop of corn without doing some sort of mechanical tillage or turning in the soil. And that's because when you harvest corn, you create this corn meal, this byproduct of harvesting the stalk of corn. And the combine spreads that over the field, and it actually creates a chemical barrier for germination. So that is why you have to do some sort of mechanical tillage to cut through that barrier to allow, well, it's not a chemical barrier, it's a natural barrier for germination. That's why you have to cut through and do some tillage to break up that barrier when you want to plant back into the same field the following year. So up here in Canada, we can get the corn gluten and apply it on our lawns. Similar idea, creating that natural barrier to stop weeds from coming in. And I can tell you, it does work. I have applied corn gluten on my backyard a couple years in a row, and I do notice a difference when I do apply it and I don't apply it, because I've been on and off with applications. Some years I do it, some years I don't. Depends on if I can get it, because it does seem to be difficult to find sometimes. However, the application of this product, because it is a natural product, is very heavy. So I think it's close to 15 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So that is something to think about when you're going to be doing it. If you're in a small lawn, it's very feasible for you. But if you're looking at a bigger lawn, it's going to be something more difficult. So for those of my folks in Canada, think about the same thing. Am I seeding in the spring? I would recommend not to, but if I have small areas to seed in the spring, don't do a pre-emergent. If I'm not seeding in the spring and I'm waiting to the fall, pre-emergent and fertilizer, get that corn gluten, throw it down when my soil temps hit 50 degrees, fertilize 2 to 3 weeks after, and then you're off to the races. So without further ado, I hope I answered a good amount of questions on pre-emergence. I know that I was rambling a little bit there, but I hope I answered a decent amount on pre-emergence. This is not the first time we'll be talking about pre-emergence. We'll have lots more to talk about as the lawn season continues all the way until everybody's awake come end of March. So without further ado, it's time to head into the next segment, and that is successes and failures with pre-emergent. Alright, welcome to the final segment of the show, and this is successes and failures. This is the part of the show where I like to talk about successes and failures I've had in my own lawn, because I am an extreme hobbyist. I do know a lot about lawn care, and I do have a lot of recommendations to other people, but I know that a lot of what comes down to lawn care is fear. There's a lot of people who are scared to do fertilizer or take things into their own hands because they are scared of what will happen if they mess it up. So in this segment of the show, successes and failures, I like to help talk about the successes and failures I've had in my own lawn to hopefully help encourage people to not be scared about doing things, because in the end, if you mess up, everybody makes mistakes. If you mess up, all you got to do is wait a couple weeks for whatever to get washed out of the soil, and you can try again. So this week we're talking about pre-emergent. So successes and failures. I talked about seeding in the spring, and a couple of years ago, well, more than a couple of years ago, when I first got into lawn care, this has to be like it's got to be like 5 or 6 years ago at least, even longer than that, I think 6. Our lawn was decently patchy in the spring because we got hit by one of those like super hot summers the year before, and I was really getting into lawn care that year, but I hadn't really read a lot about fall renovations and stuff like that. So I was one of those people who was like, let's just get some seed on there, let's try to get some lawn growing. And I had read about the temperature that was needed to grow seed, so it had a between 8 and 20 degrees Celsius. However, I had not really read a lot about when to apply, watering, and everything to do with that. So my plan was I was going to apply seed over my entire backyard in the spring. So at that time we were building our deck. So one day when we were building our deck, soil temperatures looked like they were holding, so we decided to put down seed. So we went and we put down the seed over the rest of the backyard, and it was also Scott's seed. It wasn't a high quality turf seed. And that day it was warm enough, but then all of a sudden temps dropped for weeks, and I was sitting inside being like, oh my god, I just wasted all the seed. It was like weeks and weeks of freezing cold temperatures like that. We were in a warm spell for like a month, and then all of a sudden, as soon as we put the seed down, the temperature just decided nope, and dropped like almost 5 degrees for weeks and weeks, and it was freezing cold. And then finally it recovered, and when it did recover, there was germination from the seed that we put down, but the germination was nowhere near what it should have been. And then that same year, we did the first fall renovation, and it made a significant difference. So this is something to think about, is that I needed to manage my expectations in the spring. I was expecting amazing results from this spring application that I was going to be doing, and it didn't happen. And the reason why it didn't happen was it was my fault. I shouldn't have applied seed in the spring. And this is what happens in the spring. The weather can change so quickly and make everything super unpredictable, and before you know it, it's absolutely freezing cold, and you just lost your entire window for seed and everything like that. So this is what I like to encourage in the spring, is that you need to make sure that when you're putting your seed down, you're thinking these things through, you're managing your expectations. Spring is not the best time to do any sort of grass growing, seed growing project. However, it is better than the summer. So manage your expectations and know that when you're putting down your seed, things can change very quickly, and there's not much you can do. So that was my failure in the spring, was I didn't listen to my gut, and I didn't listen to the weather, and I ended up wasting that seed. But seed is cheap. Throw it down. We did the fall renovation that spring, and or that fall, and everything went fine. Lawn recovered. Everything was good. There was no major issues. Success. Talking about fall renovation. Ever since I have done a fall renovation, I've used the corn gluten product as a pre-emergent intermittently, year after year. And whenever I've used that product, I've had great success. So that is my success, is the corn gluten does work. Ever since I've discovered that product, I've been very happy with the way that it goes. So the corn gluten does work. Think about it. If you're going to do it in your lawn, it is a successful product. And yeah, it has given me great success. Another thing to think about with pre-emergence is, as I said, there's no need to actually have to sling chems. Don't ever think that you have to throw down chems. Most springs, what I do is I go out there every weekend and I pull all the dandelions by hand before I cut the grass. So that is something to think about that you can do as well. There is no need to put some sort of herbicide on it unless it is a significant problem. You can always get out there and pull it by hand. It is manageable. So without further ado, that is it for episode number 3 of the Great Green North podcast. So thank you guys all for listening. I know this was a bit of a longer episode, but I'm very happy that I was able to get back into recording these. I really enjoy doing these. So for those of you who are new, please subscribe and rate us 5 stars on iTunes. Share this show with your friends and family, anybody who's interested in getting a great lawn. I would really appreciate people sharing the show. It helps me and it helps everybody, as we're going to make a world of everybody having great lawns, and you won't have to have dandelion farms living beside you anymore. And for those of you who are looking to support the show, please, you can go to anchor.com and you can support the podcast by paying a small price of $5 a month to get episodes a week early and to get bonus episodes every month. So please, if you're in a financial situation to do so, support the show. It really helps make the show. We put a lot of work into the show every week. So you supporting the show helps make the show so much better. And from the Great Green North, my name's Wade Murray. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you guys are staying snow-free and warm wherever you are. And we'll talk at you next week with more lawn tips. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye. The Great Green North podcast is written and hosted by Wade Murray. Great Green North can be found on YouTube at Great Green North Lawn Care. We can be found on Instagram, Twitter, and we would encourage you guys to hit subscribe on any podcast platform that you're on right now. We'll be coming at you every week with weekly episodes of the Great Green North podcast. You guys can also subscribe on Anchor for bonus episodes, as well as getting episodes 1 week early for the very low price of $5 a month. And as always, thank you guys for listening, and thank you for keeping it green.